Ladies and gentlemen, greetings from Somerville. Wow, in the background, this is perfect timing. Here's a siren, a New York City police siren going off. And that's the setting for our show today. We are in a studio in Midtown, a beautiful office space. Let's see how loud he gets. We opted to not try to find a quiet area. We decided we would do it right here in the heart, the pulse of the city, right by Times Square. And I'm sitting with Jack Perry, entrepreneur Jack Perry, in his beautiful office spaces here in Midtown. The Sync Back office, correct?
It is the Sync Back office.
I welcome Jack to the show. Now, I called you an entrepreneur. Is that a correct title?
I think so.
Yeah?
Can't think of anything else to call me.
You've been called a lot worse, I'm sure, over the years. Now, I've known Jack for about 12 years. In fact, that's our ongoing joke. It's been 12 years of beers here in the city. We've worked on various projects together and are not only having a great time exploring the world of, I'm on the content side, you are more, I would say, on the tech side of things.
I've been on the tech side probably, going on 30 years now.
30 years, my goodness, and you're only 31. So how do you do it?
I started early.
Let's start with the beginning. Tell us a little about where you're from, how you got started. How did this whole thing begin?
Well, it was really quite by chance that I became an entrepreneur. I was attending the University of Iowa, and I thought, I'm going to be a writer someday. So
a writer.
Oh, wow.
Right.
Yeah. And so I thought, how can I write more volume? And so I bought an IBM clone computer, and I started just writing like crazy and had my dot matrix printer that I would fire up.
This is old school stuff, huh?
Very old school.
IBM clone computer, you say?
Yeah, clone computer. That was kind of the big thing that happened in the mid-'80s was the ability to clone the IBM computers made it more affordable for everybody.
Okay. Oh, so you're saying it wasn't an actual IBM computer?
It was a clone.
It was, a knockoff.
An actual clone.
Oh, no way. Well, that's a fancy word for saying it just, okay.
Yeah, it was cheap.
It was cheap, yeah. Yeah, it was a knockoff, the old Canal Street computer.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I started writing a lot.
Writing what?
Just writing short stories, writing fiction, just writing whatever I could to get through the University of Iowa.
Really? What was your major?
Well, actually, I ended up graduating with a degree in liberal studies.
Is that true? Now, this is fascinating because I know you as a 99.8% tech guy. Every time we talk about anything involved in your industry, I lose you a minute into your sentence. I don't know what you're talking about because you know all these terms and text. But you were a romantic, huh?
I was.
A writer and a... What happened?
Well, I was at the time that I got my clone computer. I actually was a runner, and I was doing lots of road races, and I started tracking all of my running on a spreadsheet. In fact, I couldn't afford to buy a product called Lotus 123, but I could afford to buy a product called the Quattro Pro.
Sure.
So I bought Quattro Pro, and I started tracking how many miles I would run each day and how long it would take me to run those particular courses. And after about a year, I had all of this data, and I was actually getting better at running because I was tracking it. And I was learning more about myself as a runner. And running
you're going out, you're running, you're putting in your miles, putting in your time, putting in your, you're charting yourself.
Yeah, and it would...
You're the original Fitbit you invented, huh?
I was just 25 years too early.
Okay, exactly, man.
So, long and short of it is, I write this massive spreadsheet, and my friends that I also ran with were saying, hey, you're getting faster. How are you doing that? And I'd say, well, I got this spreadsheet, and I'm using it to track my running and my racing, and I'm setting my goals, and I'm setting new PRs from those goals. And what would happen was people would say, well, hey, can I get a copy of that spreadsheet? And at first I thought, well, that's kind of weird. Do you want a copy of my spreadsheet? And, after I handed it out to friends 2 or 3 times, I started thinking, maybe I ought to make this a product.
Wow.
Back in the 80s, you'd get home with your personal computer and it really wouldn't do much. Mm-hmm. Didn't have any software on it, and people were like, what do I do with this thing?
Right. I remember growing up, and it was just, we did nothing. You had to do little commands, and you could basically print out. You could type something and print it like a typewriter. That was all we were able to do.
That was essentially it. And so I ultimately turned that spreadsheet into a software package called Running Counts.
Really?
And sold thousands and thousands of copies of it for $49 each.
Really?
And
An actual product?
Yeah, it did actual product. Did really well with it. And one problem was that everyone who was ever going to buy that product bought it. And I was done.
That was it. Well, what about new runners?
Well, back then it was kind of, there weren't as many runners. It was
Okay.
more of a niche kind of thing.
Sure.
And I went to all the marathons and all the trade shows about running, and man, I had them flying off the shelves.
Really?
And then I realized, geez, everyone's bought it.
Everyone's
I'm
got
done.
it.
I'm done.
But that was your first big product endeavor, huh?
Yeah.
All right. All right. And now, was the writing still going on at the time? Were you still writing poems and things, or were you just... Because I was going to say, that sounds like definitely more of a tech endeavor.
Well, look, it really went this way. The reason for the writing was I wanted to get into the University of Iowa and get out of the University of Iowa as quickly as possible.
Right.
And since it's a writing school, I figured, well, might as well just start writing.
Well, right.
And
Okay.
so I took every possible course that would allow me to write.
Wow. Okay.
So-
Now, from there, you have blossomed into. You've done. I can't call them inventions. You have patents, right, in your name.
I do. I have 26 patents.
26 patents in your name, and now help me with that as an idiot comedian. That is something that you created or invented, an idea or a thing that you literally own for a certain amount of time. What is a patent exactly?
Yeah, so a patent is a method or a process for how you do things, and if you're the first person who figured something out, then you ultimately deserve royalties for the life of that particular product or patent or method.
So that, and then I think of, I don't know, like a drug company or something invents a new drug, right? They can patent it for X amount of years or something, so they can sell it because they came up with it.
They can. That's
And you have 26 patents in your name.
I do.
Is there a favorite one, or what is one that you're particularly proud of, or?
I think my favorite is a patent called air-to-web broadcast replication.
Oh, that old thing, huh?
Which was really just a method for figuring out how to put television on the internet, which has kind of led into what my company does today. So, yeah, that's my favorite.
That's your favorite one. Yeah. Now, what do you, this is, I know, a gigantic topic to try to cover, but are all your patents within the realm of tech, internet, sort of that world?
They are. They're all around the notion of taking a broadcast from one place and putting it to another place, whether it's over satellite or over the internet or even over the air. And
Okay.
I have a silly little patent that helps people get the right off-air antenna. If they wanted to watch TV with an antenna, you go and you plug in your address. It tells you which antenna you need, and away you go. You can
Is that
watch.
right?
Yep.
Now, you're actually the one who told me I could still watch TV because I canceled my cable in New York because I was always on the road paying all this money for no reason to have TV when I'm not home. And you're the one who told me, go get an antenna. I didn't know they still existed. And thanks to you, I do. I get like 20 channels in my apartment in New York City. I get to watch weird old movies and all sorts of odd things I pick up out of the sky. But it's a lot of fun. Now, when I think of someone who's created something, invented something, has a patent on something, generally, most of the success stories I know come from somebody who already knew the industry. It's the guy who was in the trucking business for 30 years and then saw a better way to do something, or whatever the industry may be. They knew the industry and then saw an opportunity. Would you say that's been your experience and your path?
Yeah, I think, my first patent came about. I was brought in to consult on a project, and both parties to this project were talking, and it was in a law firm, 20-foot conference table with lawyers on both sides, and I was sitting in the middle. And after 8 hours of listening to these two parties kind of go back and forth about how they wanted to do something, I just started doodling, and I said to stop the meeting at one point, and I said, with all due respect, I understand what you're trying to do, but here's a better way to do it.
Wow.
And so I held that up, my little doodle that I had drawn, and went over to the grease board and said, here's how we're going to do this particular thing. And ultimately, that technology was patented and has been used several billion times since.
Really?
Yep.
So you were right.
I was right.
Nice. Very nice. And in this time now, over the course of 26 patents and appearances on Capitol Hill, you've actually been on Capitol Hill in front of Congress, correct?
I have. It's a very interesting thing to do. You know, you're sitting down there, they're sitting up there, very almost godlike.
Yeah.
You know, and they intentionally, you know, you're down there a few feet below them. And yes, it's a very interesting thing to do.
And what brought you to Capitol Hill?
Well, the first time I was brought there to kind of explain what the issue was with satellite television carrying local TV channels.
Okay.
And so since my company at the time had actually created that technology that we talked about a few moments ago, Congress said, well, let's get that guy in here and ask him what he thinks.
Oh, wow. So actually a bit of an expert then. You were kind of an expert witness.
Yeah, I guess so.
Yeah, well, it's better than going and being grilled because you're in trouble for something, right?
Well, I was grilled, and I felt grilled.
Did you really?
And I got back to my hotel room, and I peeled off my suit, and I threw it away.
Is that true? You're just sitting there sweating?
Oh, man, it is a very scary thing.
I believe it. Did they give you bathroom breaks? That's what I always wonder.
They occasionally do that. Particular hearing lasted about 5 hours, and you know, I recently saw Mr. Zuckerberg, young Mr.
Yes.
Zuckerberg, and I thought, I know exactly what that feels like.
Yeah, that was you sitting in that table
Many years
sipping
ago.
that water. My goodness gracious! Wow. Well, you have one of the things that when we were chatting about this, doing this episode, you have 10 rules for being an entrepreneur. Is 10 rules of yeah, and I thought that was fascinating because it's something that you've thought through and you know, live by to a degree, and I thought that would be interesting if you could talk us through the 10 rules of being an entrepreneur.
Well, I think I call them constants.
Constants?
And I think these 10 constants that if you're going to start a company, you should follow them. And if you can't follow them, you're probably not going to succeed. So, you know, when I look at it, I think, first of all, you got to be a visionary.
Yeah.
You know, and one of the things I say is, you know, without vision, you really don't have a company. And so...
And by vision, you're saying, I'm picturing, this is what I literally envision for this idea. This is how I see it, yeah.
Yeah, and what's important about that is I think people like to follow visionaries.
Yeah.
I think we can't all see what needs to be built, so we need to work for the person that sees what needs to be built.
Sure.
You know, the next thing I think is, you know, you can make the best product in the world, but if you can't sell it, you're in trouble.
Yeah.
A lot of people build products that nobody needs.
Yes.
And so those businesses soon go out of business.
Absolutely true. Or in your case, like your running thing, where you built it and it was definitely useful, then we ran out of gas. Everyone got it.
But it was exciting while that lasted.
Yes, yeah, absolutely.
You know, and in the end, it's, you know, business is about making money and having fun.
Yeah.
Can you create an environment where you can make money and have fun? So, but you know, the constants are really people.
Okay. Number one, people.
Number one is you got to have people. You can't do it alone.
No.
And so you got to hire a great team. You got to have a great team that believes in you.
Yeah.
You know, you got to put them in place.
And that is so important. I see that in my business as well. Just the how important it is to have people that help you. I think the best things that have happened in my career have been when there are other people who are working with me and helping me do it. Because we all have our strengths, and people fill in where you may not be. You know, things that you may not be as good at. No, that makes sense. Is that nerve-wracking to try to assemble people because you know. God, you have this idea that you love and you have this vision and then you say, oh God, now I'm bringing other people in. I mean, that's got to be unnerving to say, oh, are they going to be right for it? Are they going to work well? Are they going to get it?
I think the first thing you do when you start a company is you wear every hat.
Okay.
You know, so you're putting the PowerPoints together, you're putting the pitch together, you're doing the accounting, you're paying the bills, you're emptying the trash, you're doing everything. And so as you grow the business from there, every now and then one hat gets a little bit too big.
Okay.
So maybe it's the accounting hat, maybe it's the engineering side of things, maybe you're ready to start writing code and you need people to start writing code for you. It's at that point where you say, okay, I'm going to take one of these hats off now and I'm going to hand it off to this person. But, you know, there's so much fascination out there right now with the startup culture.
Sure.
And, you know, as there should be. And one of the things you have to do is just create an environment that people want to be in, you know. And so when I go to bed at night, you know, I say, you know, am I doing the things that will make people want to work with me?
Yep.
You know, I could say for me, but the reality is I want a team that will work with me.
Yep.
You know, It's one thing to offer free pop and free cereal or whatever it is, but at the end of the day, people can go wherever they want to work nowadays. I mean,
Sure.
we've seen the unemployment numbers; they're historically low. There's a lot of jobs that aren't being filled. So, as an entrepreneur, you better get your act together and put a company where people want to be
Sure.
every day.
And that goes along with the fun that you talked about. I mean, people, you want to have fun, that you want them to have fun. Absolutely. All right, so number one's people.
Yeah, the second is, you got to be a little bit crazy, so
A little nuts.
so I call that one, madness. And, when I look back over, what does madness mean? It's showing a passionate infatuation. In fact, I got this out of the dictionary. All right, what is madness? What resonated with me is showing a passionate infatuation with or desire for, with, about, for, or over, flamboyant and daring. Okay, so that's madness.
That's madness.
So if you aren't a little bit flamboyant and daring,
Yeah.
you probably aren't going to be a great startup entrepreneur. Because you got to be out there
By
and say,
definition, you're taking a chance.
you're taking a chance and you want to say, this is me, this is what I see, and you got to be willing to go for it.
And be willing to dive in. No, that makes perfect sense. And I would say, you think of the Richard Bransons, but just, or even in the movies, you watch a movie, the stereotype of the guy who's just whatever, just taking a chance, jumping out of planes, and lives a little bit on the edge.
My hero is Bill Gates.
Yeah.
And back in the day, his mantra, what he ran around saying, and he'd write it on we didn't have grease boards back then, we had chalkboards,
All right.
but he'd run around saying that Microsoft is a computer on every desktop and in every home running Microsoft software. Okay, so that was his goal. It was basically, I want to be on every computer in the world.
Wow.
And he got there.
He was gonna say, he did darn close, if not there. Yeah, that's basically what he did.
He did.
Wow. Okay.
And that's why he is occasionally the richest person in the world.
Yeah, depending on the day in the market, right? I'd be happy to be in the top 100.
Well, I think you'll get there.
Wow. I definitely have the madness part down. So what's number 3 then?
Well, I think number 3 is purpose. I mean, if you're, as I said earlier, there's so much fascination with the startup world, that sometimes businesses are getting started that really shouldn't start.
Okay.
Sometimes we're having these hacker weekends and people are coming together and they're inventing something like, let's figure out a way to manage our softball team on Facebook.
Right.
Well, that's fine, and that was a really good idea, but I don't know that we should actually start a company around that. So
Right.
you need to have a purpose for going into business, and that purpose needs to be to solve a problem. So I always say purpose.
Right. And that makes a lot of sense, because purpose is, I always think of the old adage, you need to fill a need. And that is, to your point, to make sure it's a real, genuine need that is a big enough need.
Yep.
It's not just the guy down the street who needs it, but there's a general need for it. Yeah.
And you need to communicate that need with, the members of your team, and they need to be able to articulate it as well. I mean, I recall one time where I had a member of my team was doing an outstanding interview. It was the best interview I perhaps had ever heard at that point, but it was absolutely 100% false. And so,
Sounds like entertainment.
I sat back and I was kind of nodding my head, and at one point, it was just about over, the editor who was actually doing the interview turned to me and said, "Now, Jack, that isn't why your company exists, is it?" I said, "Well, no, but let me take this opportunity to remind us all why we're here today." So I had to hijack the meeting back. So
Right.
I think purpose is important. It's important that your customers and your employees understand what it is.
Okay. And how about number 4?
Well, that's caution. Caution, you've started a business, it's doing well, you got money coming in, whether it's through investments or through customers actually buying your product, you start having to make more and more decisions. And a couple of the rules that I put out there with respect to caution are both related to kind of hasty personnel decisions.
Okay.
And so one of the things that I say is don't over-title.
Don't over-type?
Over-title.
All right.
So, just give you a quick example. When I was hired at a startup way back, 30 years ago now, I started out in the morning. I was market research analyst.
Okay.
And I went to my first staff meeting, And it was a really good meeting, and I had quite a bit of input. And I said, well, we ought to think about this or think about that. And the CEO at the time, or the founder of the company, also a young founder at the time, he said, Spike, he called me Spike.
You're Spike?
I was Spike back then.
Okay.
Well, it was.
Is that a nickname?
Remember back when Bruce Willis's hair was kind
Yes.
of falling out during the transition? Bruce and I, our timelines are the same.
Okay. Okay.
So I was called Spike.
You were fair enough. Okay.
and so here's Spike, me, the budding young market research analyst. And I did well in this staff meeting, and the founder of the company turns to me and says, "You're now the director of market research."
Oh
Now,
my.
this is my first day.
Oh my.
First morning. So I went from market research analyst to the director of market research.
In one day.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So as I mentioned earlier, I'm a runner, so I go to lunch, and what I did back then was I ran at lunch, and got showered up and back, and then we had a general marketing meeting later that day.
That you have to run because you're now the.
And so, I'm the new director of market research, going to bring my input on the research side.
Right.
And it was a great meeting, and I had some ideas. We got to do this, we got to do that, and I think we got to do a winter catalog. And the same founder turns to me in that meeting and says, you're now the director of marketing.
Jeez.
Well, which was great.
Yeah.
I couldn't wait to get home that night. And,
Yeah, exactly. You're going to be president by the end of the day.
I probably called my wife and said, you need to call your dad and tell him I'm now the director of marketing. And so, but I'll say this, six months later, when they actually hired the director of marketing,
Okay.
who was someone who had, 10, 15 years experience, I, as the current director of marketing, was a little surprised.
But yeah, I was
So-
going to say. You got stripped of your title?
I didn't get stripped of my title, but this person was the senior director of
Oh, okay. They just keep adding words to the. So don't over title. You're saying.
Yeah, so don't over title. And then the other is, I hearken back to the old TV show, Leave It to Beaver,
Sure.
the character Eddie Haskell.
Yes. Yes.
And so I always caution myself and the people that work for me, don't get lulled in by the Eddie Haskells, who are the people who are always saying yes to everything you say.
Okay.
And if you do, don't promote that type of person too quickly, because you really need to get out there and solicit feedback. You want
Sure.
the people reporting to you that are asking the hard questions. Why are we doing this? Or, maybe you're doing it because you just have a gut feel.
Right.
But so I'd say don't promote too quickly.
Don't
as well.
promote too quickly. Now and on that note, you actually, in the time I've known you, you seem to work to a degree with a lot of people you've known for a while, and people that you've worked with years ago and over the years, and that must be a comforting feeling, having developed a sort of kind of group of people that you know and trust and think are good, and then continue to work with. There's got to be a level of comfort in that, huh?
There is, and it's one of those metrics, I guess, that goes unnoticed. But, at my last company, the average tenure of any employee was about 12 years.
Wow.
This new one that I started, it's 9 years old. I hired the same people that were at my last company.
Wow.
I sold that and then hired everybody to work for me at this one. And so most of those folks have been with me 9 years this time.
Wow.
And 12 years the time before.
And a testament to you, and what you're doing something right, clearly, because they want to come over and work with you again.
Well, business is about making money and having fun,
Yeah.
as I said.
Yeah.
And if you can do that, then people want to.
And you're doing something right.
Yeah.
All right, what's next up?
So one of the things that I think is really important to do is measure.
Okay.
So the next constant is measure. You got to get up every day and say, how are we doing?
Okay.
You got to ask the hard questions. You got to look forward and set goals. You got to say, okay, what do we want to accomplish today, this week, this month, this year? Because how are you going to know if you're doing well unless you set goals and you can measure against those?
Sure.
You got to be able to track kind of the data. What are your, all the rage now is KPIs, which is...
I don't know what that is.
Well, I didn't either. But if you Google KPIs,
All right.
key performance indicators.
All right.
So KPIs. And KPIs are what, if you're raising money or whatever from venture capitalists, they're going, hey, what's your KPIs? And so you got to set the things that you can measure to see how well you're doing. So,
Okay.
and I think you got to come together every now and then. It's hard because in a startup environment, there's a lot of fun
Sure.
until, money starts running out. Then it's not so much
Yeah,
fun.
not so much fun. Yeah.
But, you got to sit back every now and then and just see how you're doing. You got to
Yeah.
look forward, set your goals.
Yeah.
You got to look back and measure how you did.
That makes perfect sense. Yeah. Okay. On to number 6.
6 is face, or better yet, FaceTime. Look, you got to get up, you got to get on an airplane, you got to go see your customers, you got to let them know that they're important to you, you got to shake their hands, you got to just basically say, I'm here for you, here's what I'm building,
Yeah.
and what do you think?
Yeah.
So, and you got to go above and beyond. How do you differentiate yourself or your company from your competitors?
Yeah.
Way back in the day, I used to throw these elaborate parties in Vegas. So you're
Yeah.
practically a Las Vegan,
Yes, I just spent a little bit of time there, and I've been to a few parties there.
and you've been to a few parties. And I'd rent these the suite at the Bellagio, presidential suite, and I'd invite my customers in. And the next day, having spent $10,000-$15,000 the night before, I'd have like 2 years supply of meatballs left over in my room. and then I thought, all right, something's wrong with this. Everybody came. I had all this great food, all the great booze.
Yeah.
But how can I better spend that money? So
Right.
I took
Especially
it.
in Vegas, you're buying meatballs?
Yeah, I'm buying meatballs. Well, there might have been.
It's a different kind of Vegas than I do.
You can get a lot of meatballs for $10,000.
I bet you can.
So I figured, how can I spend $10,000 better? So this was back when the Texas Hold'em was all the rage.
Sure.
And everybody was buying Texas. I even bought a Texas Hold'em table that's in my basement, has stuff stacked up on top of it.
Nice.
But back then it was like all the rage, and so we went down to Binion's, which is the downtown part of Las Vegas, and I said, I want to rent this out. And they said, well, you don't rent it out. I said, well, give me 10 of those tables over in the corner. And, someone had to get a manager who got a manager who got a manager, and they walked over there with me, and they said, what are you thinking? I said, well, I want to bring in 100 of my customers, and I want to spend $100 each on them to enter them into the tournament, a private tournament for us.
Right.
And they looked at me and said, well, we've never done that. I said, well, okay.
Well, that's it.
Doesn't matter.
Here we are.
I want to do it.
Yeah.
So what I ended up doing for about 5 or 6 years, ran a Texas Hold'em tournament. I spent $10,000. Now think about what happens in Vegas. You drink for free, right? When
Sure.
you're gambling.
Sure.
So I'd spend the same $10,000. 100 of my customers would come in. Myself and my key employees would walk around to those 10 tables and talk to people, shake hands, how you doing?
Brilliant.
By the time it went from 10 tables to 8 to 6 to, everybody hung around because
Yep.
they wanted to be there.
Having fun. They're
Yep.
yeah.
Having a great time. And at the end of the night, of that $10,000 I spent, 7,800 of it was then given to the winners, the top 4 or 5 winners. So instead of having thousands of dollars of leftover meatballs,
You actually had this.
my customers went home with the money.
With some money. Well, that's great. And they say, what is it, 90% of life is showing up. And what a great lesson that not only, A, as you say, show up, but B, find a way to make it fun, memorable, unique, They always say people, what do they say? They don't remember what you served. They don't remember what but they remember how you made them feel. And you gave them a good time.
Yeah, so FaceTime is so important.
FaceTime. Yeah. Okay. All right. And then next is number 7.
Money.
Money.
I could do money.
Money.
Well, we won't go there.
No. Speaking of Vegas, you need money. You need investors. You need to spend money. What's money?
It's an interesting thing because most businesses will need money. It's the rare business that starts that money comes in so quickly.
Yeah.
You don't have to raise it. And I think the number one thing I've learned over the few companies that I've started is you have to take the right money in.
Okay.
You have to take the right money in with the right motivations.
By right money, you mean investors.
Yeah, the right investors, and you've got venture capitalists, lots of them out there, and they're going to run you through the gauntlet to decide whether or not they want to invest in you, and that's okay because they bring a lot of value to the table. But then there's the strategic investors, the bigger companies that have similar goals to yours.
Okay.
I think you should bring them in. And the one area that I'd say, you should show the most caution is with the angel investors.
Okay.
Because there's a lot of people out there that, they're really great angel investors, and then there's some that are...
Angel investor being someone who just grants you money and doesn't
Well-
know the business? What is that?
Well, an angel investor, angel round is typically the first round that you bring in. So people are going to their friends and their family, or maybe that rich person down the street that so-and-so knows or
Yeah.
whatever. And, I think you just have to make sure you're bringing in the right ones.
Yeah.
Because if you bring in the wrong investors too early and they're thinking about an exit, then your time is spent thinking about getting them an exit.
Sure.
And,
They're
an
looking
exit
to
is-
cash out.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So you want to make sure it's the right one.
Okay. That's tough. And there are a lot of people out there who, just in this city alone, New York, my goodness, there are just investors, right? There's people with money who are looking to invest in ideas.
The interesting thing that's happened in the last 10 years is New York has kind of become the epicenter
Has it?
of startups. And not, no disrespect to Palo Alto, because it's still, lots of investing happening out there, probably an equal amount to New York. But New York came from basically zero
Wow.
to hundreds and hundreds of startups. Venture capitalists open up their offices here if they weren't here already. So,
Wow.
yeah, I'd say it's,
Gotta
New
start
York.
borrowing some money from people.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I have 10 constants that you can read, and
Yeah.
before you go,
All I remember is meatballs. All right, we're in a home stretch then. Number 8,
so that one is celebrate.
celebrate.
It may seem kind of silly, but
This one I think I'm good at. Celebrating is
I think you probably are. Look, and it's celebrating the little successes.
Yeah.
It's celebrating the things like, I needed to hire 5 people by the end of this month, and I've got those people hired. Or we wanted to get our first customer signed, or we wanted to have our first beta test going by the next month or whatever. If you set those goals and you hit them, then you deserve to kick back and celebrate.
That makes sense. Yeah. Celebrate.
That's it. It's just as simple.
I like that. Enjoy the journey, right?
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
Okay.
So,
Number 9,
number 9, listening.
listening.
I think listening is probably one of the most important. I talked about my running software. It got better over the 5 or 6 versions that I actually wrote of that from the first one, because I was talking to the people who were using it.
Right.
And, the second year of that company, people would come to the trade shows and say, "Oh, I love it, but could you make it do this?" And so I spent a lot of time listening to the customers, and even today, and with SyncBack, a much bigger company doing much bigger things, I spend a lot of time listening to what the market needs.
Yeah.
And so I think listening is one of the most important skills that any entrepreneur can have.
That makes a lot of sense, and I would, interject, like, you have a vision, and I would say overall, no matter what your idea was coming into a company, you have to be malleable, right? You have to adjust, you have to be able, and listening, I imagine, is a huge part of that. You saw something, and you were onto something, but I bet you have to tweak along the way, adjust, and as you say, listen to the people, and what do they want? Don't just force your idea necessarily.
Yeah, if you really step back, business is kind of simple.
Yeah.
Right? It's you build stuff, you sell stuff.
Yeah.
The only way you can do either one of those is to listen to what your customers are saying.
That
If you
makes
skip
sense.
either step, you're in trouble.
That makes sense, yeah. Which brings us to drum roll, the number 10. The number 10 rules out of the 10 rules of being an entrepreneur by Jack Perry is
Family.
family. Ooh. this sounds boring.
But it's really.
Teasing you.
Look, I guess now I'm approaching 3 million miles on United,
Are you really?
I am.
3 million.
and probably 1,500 nights in Marriott's.
Oh my goodness gracious.
So that's not going to get me very far at home.
No.
In fact,
No, that doesn't impress your wife, huh? I know your wife, and that would not impress her.
so I reserved family for the last constant, because if you succeed as an entrepreneur, and I have a couple of times, this is not my first rodeo, so to speak, you don't want to get there to the top of the mountain and look around and say,
You're alone.
I'm alone.
Yeah. The miserable millionaire, yeah.
Yeah, I wouldn't have been able to do the things that I've been able to do if it weren't for family, and I wouldn't be able to achieve the things I've achieved if it weren't for family making sacrifices and letting me do it. And so family is an easy one for my final constant.
And that's nice. It's sweet to hear because you do. I mean, I've known you for a while, and I've seen how important your family is to you, and how on the weekends you're with your family and your kids, and now your grandkids. You have 5 beautiful grandkids. Is that
do.
right? And I mean, you are out in Iowa, and you're on your tractor, and you are doing fun, well-rounded things. When I think about someone who's starting businesses and having patents and all, it's not what you picture. And probably with good reason, because I think, was it Dave Thomas who started Wendy's? I happened to just watch that, The Founder, which was the Ray Kroc story. Those guys, if I may, didn't seem necessarily like Family Matter. They seemed like one-minded, this is the business idea, and it's come hell or high water. In fact, Ray Kroc got divorced the moment it clicked, and but it's nice for me to see someone like you who works your butt off, is wildly successful, but also has a normal family, has balance, which I think is probably when I see you smiling with your grandkids on Facebook, it's just it warms my heart. It really makes me feel good because I'm a person who has sacrificed a lot, as we all have, for a career that's perhaps the road less traveled. But you've made it look really good, and you've had a lot of fun doing it.
Well, I couldn't have done it without family, that's for sure.
And meeting me probably was...
That was really the catalyst. I threw all the constants out at that point.
Jack Perry, it is a pleasure to sit with you. Thank you for taking the time to share your insights, your information. I look forward to many more years of watching you be successful professionally and having 12 more years of beers with you. How about that?
Fair enough. I'm ready to go.
Thanks for tuning in, everybody. We'll see you next time.